Every year, more than 1 billion goats are raised, milked, shorn, and processed all over the world. Behind every liter of milk, every wheel of cheese, and every cashmere garment, there is a gigantic chain that almost nobody sees. Smart farms, robotic milking parlors, dairy plants where milk is pasteurized in seconds, and textile factories capable of transforming a handful of fiber into coats worth thousands of dollars. Today, I am going to take you calmly and step by step inside that hidden world. We are going to follow the complete journey of goats and their products, from extreme landscapes where only the toughest animals survive, to high-tech facilities where everything is controlled by sensors and software. It is not just a story about animals. It is the story of how millions of goats and their products are processed to feed, clothe, and warm the planet. Everything begins far away from any factory, in places that seem designed to put life to the test. Frozen mountains where the wind cuts across the face, dry hillsides where it barely rains, rocky slopes where grass appears only in small patches. In many of those places, a cow would not last long, a sheep would struggle, but a goat would. Goats are, by nature, survivors. They do not need vast green pastures or perfect climates. They can climb steep slopes, walk over loose stones, and feed on tough shrubs, dry leaves, and plants that no other farm animal would look at twice. Their bodies are prepared to make the most of every sprout of vegetation and every drop of water they find. Depending on the climate and the use they will be given, the breeds change. There are goats specialized in milk, which produce several liters a day with a composition rich in fat and protein. Others are raised for their meat, with more robust bodies and fast growth. And then there are cashmere goats, which live in the coldest and highest regions, where harsh winters force the body to produce a fine, dense, and very warm undercoat. That undercoat will be, years later, the fiber you see turned into scarves and luxury sweaters. Care begins from the first breath. When a goat gives birth, normally in simple barns or in special maternity areas, the young come into the world wet and fragile. In their first minutes, they must get to their feet, find the mother's udder, and take colostrum, that first thick milk full of antibodies. That first drink is their life insurance. It gives them defenses, energy, and a solid foundation to grow healthy. In more advanced operations, that birth does not go unnoticed. A caretaker comes over, cleans the kid's muzzle, checks that it is breathing well, checks reflexes, and when everything is in order, places a numbered ear tag or a small chip in the ear. From that moment on, that little goat is no longer just one more in the herd. It becomes an individual with its own history inside the farm's database: date of birth, mother, weight, health, vaccines. As the days go by, the mother's milk is gradually combined with solid feed. First, small feed specially formulated for young animals, then tender hay, then forage and cereal mixes. In traditional systems, this change is controlled by the shepherd's experience. He knows when the animal is ready just by looking at it. In technified systems, nutritionists design rations for each stage: rearing, pregnancy, lactation. The objective is the same: for the goat to grow strong, without deficiencies, with a prepared immune system and good bone structure. Even on the simplest farms, the relationship between human beings and goats is very close. The shepherd recognizes his animals by their faces, by the way they walk, by the way they bleat. He knows who is dominant, who usually stays at the back of the herd, who is pregnant long before her belly shows. That knowledge accumulated over generations is now mixed with modern tools and data. When a goat is going to cross borders, the scene changes. It is no longer just about moving a herd from one hillside to another. Now we are talking about moving animals of high genetic and sanitary value with strict protocols that must be followed. Everything begins in collection centers, where goats coming from different farms are grouped together. There they are checked one by one: body condition, age, hooves, eyes, behavior. Veterinarians take blood samples, look for signs of disease, and verify vaccines. Only the goats that pass all the filters can move forward. They receive special supplementation to arrive strong for the trip. Their feeding is adjusted, and the exact departure day is planned. Afterwards, they are loaded into trucks designed specifically for transporting animals. Anti-slip floors, enough height for them to move without hitting themselves, cross ventilation so that air circulates even when the truck is stopped. During the journey, the work is not limited to driving. Every so often, the vehicle stops. The driver checks the herd's behavior, checks water, observes whether any goat is lying down in a strange way or bleats differently. When borders are crossed, official sanitary controls appear. Documentation is reviewed, certificates are confirmed. Visual inspections may be carried out, and, in some cases, short quarantines before the herd can continue. When the goats finally arrive at their destination, they are not greeted by just any pen. What lies on the other side of the gate is a farm that seems taken from a high-tech laboratory. These are smart farms, designed as a system where everything is measured, recorded, and adjusted in real time. As soon as each goat enters, it becomes integrated into an identification system. A chip in the ear or a collar with a sensor makes it possible to know who it is, how old it is, what productive stage it is in, and which herd it comes from. Antennas and readers distributed around the farm detect its passage through feeders, waterers, and the milking parlor. All that information is sent to a livestock management program that analyzes patterns and sends alerts when something falls outside the normal range. The buildings where these goats live do not resemble the typical dog sheds that many people imagine. They are spacious, bright structures with high roofs, automated ventilation, curtains that go up and down depending on the wind and the rain, and floors prepared to stay dry. Inside, the herd is organized into groups: females in production, pregnant females, young kids, breeding males. Each group has its own space, adapted to its needs. Feeding is managed with precision. Giant mixers prepare complete rations, combining hay, silage, grains, byproducts, and mineral supplements. That mix is distributed several times a day by carts that move down the aisles, leaving a perfect line of feed. On some farms, the feeders are smart and dispense portions according to each animal's history. That way, a high-production goat receives a little more energy, while one at rest receives a lighter diet. In the maternity areas, things are even more delicate. Pregnant goats are moved there a few weeks before giving birth. Sensors and cameras monitor their movements. If a goat begins to show signs of labor at night, a notification can arrive on the manager's phone so that he can come help if needed. The young born in the middle of winter are moved to temperature-controlled areas until they can better regulate their own body heat. This entire system turns the farm into a kind of living organism, where each parameter is adjusted to care for the animal and at the same time maximize productivity. And at the center of everything is the key moment: milking. Modern goat milking is a perfectly rehearsed choreography. At the same hours every day, the corral gates open and the goats enter, without hurry but without hesitation, toward the milking parlor. For them, it is routine. They know that there they will receive a small ration of concentrated feed, and that at the same time, the pressure of their full udders will be relieved. The milking parlor is designed so that the process is fast and calm. There are rows of individual stalls, railings that adjust to the height of the animals, and floors that prevent slipping. When a goat takes its place, the system reads its chip. On a screen appear its number, its production from previous days, its lactation status, and possible health alerts. Before placing the teat cups, an operator cleans the teats with a disinfecting solution and disposable wipes. This gesture, which seems simple, is fundamental for milk quality and udder health. Then the machines come into action. A set of teat cups attaches gently, and a vacuum pump, carefully regulated, imitates the suction rhythm of a young animal. The system combines phases of vacuum and rest, extracting the milk without harming the tissues. The milk travels from the goat to a refrigerated tank without touching the air. It does so through perfectly sealed stainless steel pipes. Inline sensors measure flow, temperature, and other variables. If a goat's milk shows strange values, that milk can be automatically diverted so that it does not mix with the rest. In a few minutes, when the flow decreases, the teat cups release and the goat leaves the station. The next one takes its place. Each parlor can milk hundreds of goats per shift. The milk from all those animals is mixed in large tanks that keep the temperature at around 4 degrees from the very first minute. That constant cold is the first barrier against bacterial growth and the first guarantee of quality. When the tanks fill up, refrigerated tanker trucks enter the scene. Their mission is to transport that goat milk to the processing plants. There, the milk undergoes rigorous control before entering the system. Samples are taken, parameters are measured, residues of medicines are sought, and the composition is evaluated. Only when the results are correct is the valve opened and the white liquid begins to flow inside the plant. The first treatment is purely physical: filtration and clarification. The milk passes through filters that retain macroscopic particles and then through centrifuges that separate small impurities, cellular remains, and any unwanted element. Then comes the key stage: pasteurization. In heat exchangers, the milk rises in seconds to around 72 degrees, is kept there for a brief period, and then is cooled again to 4 degrees. It is a calculated thermal shock to destroy pathogenic bacteria without damaging the structure of proteins and vitamins. From here on, the milk is divided into several routes. One part is destined for direct consumption. It is homogenized so the fat does not separate. It is packaged in bottles or bags, and it is taken to cold rooms before being distributed. Another part becomes yogurts, fermented drinks, or infant products, and an especially selected fraction is reserved for one of the star products, goat cheese. In the cheese-making room, the milk is transformed into something solid, aromatic, and much more concentrated. Large cheese vats receive thousands of liters of pasteurized milk. It is gently heated to a warm temperature, ideal for lactic bacteria. These microorganisms, added as cultures, begin to consume the milk's natural sugars and produce lactic acid. Little by little, the sweet flavor turns into a more acidic and complex profile. When the acidity reaches the desired point, rennet is added, an enzyme that causes the milk proteins to group together in a three-dimensional network. In a short time, that white liquid becomes a uniform gelatinous mass, the curd. Then special blades cut that block into hundreds of cubes. The size of the cube is not random. Small cubes give firmer cheeses, large cubes, softer cheeses. With gentle agitation and controlled heat, those cubes contract and release whey, the liquid that surrounds them. Pumps and pipes remove the whey, and the more compact curd is transferred to perforated molds. There, the weight of the mass itself, and in some cases regulated presses, help expel the residual whey. At this stage, salt also enters the picture, sprinkled over the curd, mixed into the mass, or applied through brine baths. Salt enhances flavor, helps preserve, and takes part in the final texture. Fresh goat cheeses are ready for the market in just a few days. White, slightly moist, with a mild and acidic flavor. But in many plants, part of the production is destined for aged cheeses. Those cheeses go to special chambers, where temperature and humidity are kept within very narrow ranges. There they rest for weeks or months on shelves. They are turned over. The rind is checked. The growth of surface molds is controlled. Day after day, the aromas intensify. The texture changes. The color deepens. Each piece that comes out of that chamber is the result of a mixture of microbiology, patience, and control. While all of this happens in the world of milk and cheese, in other corners of the planet, Kashmir goats continue their own cycle. During winter, their bodies produce a fine and very dense undercoat to withstand very low temperatures. When spring arrives and the days grow longer, that undercoat begins to shed naturally. It is the perfect moment for collection. Instead of shearing the animal as is done with sheep, caretakers use special combs or gentle suction systems to remove that undercoat that is already coming loose. The process is patient and meticulous. The comb is passed again and again over the animal's body, collecting only the fine fiber and leaving the rest of the coat intact. A single goat produces barely between 100 and 150 grams of pure cashmere per year. To make one sweater, the equivalent of the production of several goats is needed, hence its price and prestige. The raw fiber, full of small plant remains and dirt, is taken to textile plants. There it is washed with warm water and mild detergents, slowly dried, and passed through machines that open it and aerate it. Afterwards, special combing machines separate the longer and finer fibers from the shorter and coarser ones. Only the best is destined for the production of high-quality cashmere yarn. Those selected fibers are aligned, turned into slivers, and then into yarns by precision spinning machines. The yarns are dyed, wound, and passed on to looms and flat knitting machines. There, light scarves, soft sweaters, and warm coats are born. When you see a cashmere garment in a display window, it is easy to forget that behind that fabric, there are years of breeding in extreme climates, genetic selection, and a very carefully managed industrial process. Besides milk, cheese, and fiber, the goat also provides meat in many cultures. The animals that have already completed their productive life, or that are raised specifically for meat, follow another route. They are selected in classification centers and sent to specialized slaughterhouses, where everything is designed to minimize stress and guarantee hygiene. Transport is planned so that times are short. The facilities allow for prior resting periods, and the internal process follows strict rules. Without going into details, the objective is for the meat that reaches the consumer to be safe, traceable, and of good quality. From these plants come carcasses that, after being cooled, are cut up and distributed to butcher shops, restaurants, and other factories that make derived products. Skins, organs, and other byproducts go to leather, pharmaceutical, or supplement industries. The idea is to make the most of each animal, reducing waste and multiplying sources of value. If we put all these pieces together, milk, cheese, meat, cashmere, the real impact of the goat on the global economy becomes enormous. It is a relatively small animal, but with a gigantic productive footprint. It can live where others cannot, transform rough vegetation into high-value food, produce luxury fiber, and do it all with remarkable efficiency in the use of resources. In a world that seeks more sustainable systems, goats have a clear advantage. They need less water than other large ruminants. They make use of marginal land, and they allow communities in difficult areas to obtain food, shelter, and income in a constant way. While many eyes are focused on large industrial farms of other species, goats quietly continue fulfilling their role. Every drop of milk that comes out of a robotic milking parlor, every goat cheese that matures in a climate-controlled chamber, every cashmere garment that is folded in a store, and every portion of meat that reaches a plate are the consequence of thousands of decisions. Which breeds to raise, how to feed them, which technology to incorporate, which welfare standards to respect. The next time you see a goat cheese in the supermarket or a label that says 100% cashmere, you will remember that behind it there is not only a finished product. There are kids being born on remote farms, smart farms full of sensors, tanker trucks full of icy milk, steel tanks, silent aging rooms, combs pulling fine fiber in frozen climates, and hands guiding that whole process. The world of goats is much more than a herd on a hillside. It is a global network of fields, farms, factories, and people who, day after day, transform the resilience of this animal into food and products that accompany our lives without us realizing it. And now, every time you hear the word goat, you will know that behind it there is one of the most surprising and underestimated productive chains on the planet.